They say you never hear the bullet that kills you, but I heard the notification that ended my marriage. It was a precise, cheerful chime from the phone, sitting on the marble countertop, cutting through the hiss of the espresso machine. Ryan thought he was the architect of this exit, sketching a new life in the tropics with a younger muse and my money. He didn't realize that in this house, and in this company, I was the one who poured the foundation, and I had poured it deep. The chime sounded again, a confirmation. I didn't pick up the phone immediately. I watched the dark liquid drip into the porcelain cup, counting the seconds. 1, 2, 3. My heart wasn't racing. It was slowing down, a heavy, rhythmic thud against my ribs, like a war drum. I wiped my hands on a tea towel, the fabric rough against my palms, before I finally reached for the device. The screen was bright, too bright for the gray morning light filtering through the kitchen windows. I stared at the banking app notification. The transfer was complete. $4,200,000. Gone. I swiped to unlock the screen, my thumb moving with practiced steady calm. I navigated to the business accounts. The operating liquidity pool was empty. 0. He had done exactly what I anticipated he would do, down to the cent. He hadn't just skimmed the top. He had gutted the firm, taking the capital we needed for the grand skyscraper project in Dubai. "You idiot," I whispered, the words tasting like copper in my mouth. I wasn't angry at the theft. The theft was the key. I opened the flight tracker app next. I had installed the tracking software on his phone 6 months ago, disguised as a battery optimization tool. The little blue dot was moving across the map, accelerating down the runway at JFK flight QA492 to Doha, then connecting to Malay. He was airborne. The silence in the kitchen felt heavy, suffocating. I walked to the island where he usually sat for breakfast, reading the Architectural Digest and ignoring me. His stool was empty, but something was sitting there, gleaming under the pendant lights. It was his wedding band. It wasn't just left there. It was placed on top of a folded piece of paper. My stomach tightened, a physical reaction I couldn't suppress despite my mental preparation. I picked up the ring. It was cold, heavy platinum. I unfolded the note. It was handwritten, his frantic, jagged script rushing across the page. "Megan, I can't do the suffocation anymore. I need air. I need color. Don't look for me. The money is my severance for 12 years of building your father's legacy. Goodbye." I crushed the paper in my fist. He still thought this was about my father. He still thought he was the victim. I looked back at the phone. The little blue dot was now over the Atlantic Ocean. He was trapped in a metal tube for 14 hours. Perfect. I dropped the ring into the garbage disposal and flipped the switch. The grinding of metal on metal was the most satisfying sound I had heard in years. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. The glass doors of Sterling and Vance Architects usually glided open with a silent, expensive whoosh. Today, they felt like the gates to an asylum. As soon as I stepped into the lobby, the noise hit me. It wasn't the usual hum of productivity, the clicking of mouses, the low murmur of client calls. It was the high-pitched frequency of panic. Sarah, our office manager, was standing at the reception desk, her face blotchy and red. She was clutching a phone to her ear, her knuckles white. When she saw me, she nearly dropped the receiver. "Megan, thank God," she gasped, ignoring the usual formalities. I don't know what's happening. Payroll. It bounced. Everyone's checks. All of them. I adjusted my blazer, ensuring my expression was one of perfect, bewildered concern. "What do you mean, bounced? That's impossible. We just cleared the quarterly retainers." I know, Sarah stammered, tears welling in her eyes. "But the bank. The system says insufficient funds. And Ryan, I can't reach Ryan. His phone is off." I walked past her towards the open plan workspace. The designers were gathered in clusters, whispering. They looked at me with a mixture of fear and accusation. They knew I was the CFO. They knew I handled the money. If the money was gone, They looked at me. "Everyone, please," I said, raising my voice just enough to carry over the din. I pitched my tone to sound shaky, on the verge of cracking. I'm looking into it. There must be a banking error. Please, just go back to your desks." "Banking error?" Derek, one of the senior draftsmen, stepped forward. He held up his phone. "Megan, my mortgage payment is due today. The bank says the corporate account is frozen, not empty, frozen." I froze. Frozen? That wasn't part of the plan. It should have just been empty, unless the automatic fail-safes I had triggered kicked in faster than I calculated. "I'm calling the bank right now," I said, retreating toward my glass-walled office. I shut the door and pulled the blinds, trembling. But the tremble was performance art. I sat at my desk and logged into the secure admin panel. Ryan had authorized the transfer at 6 in the morning, but the timestamp on the freeze was 6:05. Wait. I squinted at the screen. The freeze hadn't come from the bank's fraud department. It had come from a creditor, the Dubai developers. They had been watching the account. My heart did a genuine skip this time. If the creditors were already moving, my window of opportunity to steer the narrative was closing. I needed to establish victimhood now. I reached for the landline to call our legal counsel, but I saw movement through the slats of the blinds. Blue lights were flashing against the lobby walls. I stood up and peeked out. 2 uniformed officers were walking through the glass doors, followed by a man in a cheap suit who looked like a detective. They weren't walking toward Ryan's empty office. They were walking straight toward mine. The interrogation room smelled like pine cleaner and old sweat. It was a cliché, really, just like Ryan's affair. The detective, a man named Miller, who looked like he hadn't slept in a week, sat across from me. He had a notepad and a digital recorder on the metal table between us. "Mrs. Vance," Miller said, his voice gravelly, "I want to be clear. You're not under arrest, but given the magnitude of the missing funds and your husband's sudden departure, we need to understand the timeline." I wrapped my cardigan tighter around myself, shrinking into the chair. "I told you I woke up. He was gone. The note..." I flushed it. I was angry. I didn't know about the money then. Miller tapped his pen on the table. $4 million doesn't just vanish, ma'am, and you're the CFO. You have the authentication keys. "Ryan is the CEO," I said softly. "He has the master override. He said he needed to move capital for the Dubai material procurement. I thought..." I let a tear slip. It was easy. I just had to think about the time Ryan told me my ambition was unbecoming. "Did you authorize the transfer?" Miller asked, his eyes sharp. "No," I whispered. "Can you prove that?" I reached into my tote bag. My hands were shaking. I pulled out a thick manila folder. I brought the audit logs. I printed them before you arrived at the office. I was trying to figure out what happened. Miller took the folder. He opened it, scanning the pages. I held my breath. This was the pivot point. If he looked closely, he would see that the transfer originated from Ryan's terminal, authorized by Ryan's biometrics. But if he looked too closely, he might see that the security protocols protecting that account had been lowered 24 hours prior, by me. "This shows the authorization came from a device with ID RV01, Miller muttered. "Ryan's iPad," I supplied helpfully. "He takes it everywhere." Miller looked up, his expression softening slightly. "Okay, it looks like he acted alone on the transfer. But Mrs. Vance, where is he going? We checked flight manifests. There's a Ryan Vance on a flight to Qatar." "Qatar?" I feigned shock. Why would he go there?" "We don't know yet, but we need to secure his assets here immediately. The creditors are already filing injunctions." Miller leaned forward. "Did he take anything else? Valuables? Documents?" "Just his clothes," I said, "and his ego." Miller didn't laugh. He flipped to the back of his notepad. We checked the house security footage you provided. We saw him leaving with 2 large suitcases at 5 in the morning. But Mrs. Vance, we also checked the safe in the bedroom. You said it was empty? Yes. He took the cash. He didn't just take the cash, Miller said, watching my face closely. We found a receipt in the trash bin near your driveway. It looks like he stopped to buy 4 tickets, not 1. My blood ran cold. 4? Tickets for who? I asked, my voice dropping. We verified the passport scans used for the booking, Miller said, sliding a photocopy across the table. Ryan Vance, Chloe Summers, and 2 minors. I looked at the photocopy. My children's faces stared back at me, Liam and Ava. But the kids are at school, I stammered, the panic suddenly very real. I dropped them off this morning. I know, Miller said grimly. He didn't take them, but he took their physical passports, Mrs. Vance, which means you can't leave the country to go get him. He stranded you here. I stormed into the office of prestige and mahogany, tossing my bag onto the leather sofa. Arthur, my lawyer, didn't even blink. He was 70 years old, wearing a suit that cost more than my first car, and he had the moral compass of a great white shark. He took the passports, Arthur, I hissed, pacing the length of the Persian rug. He took Liam and Ava's passports. He thinks he's trapping me here. Arthur poured a glass of sparkling water and slid it across his desk. Calm down, Megan. It's a psychological play. If he wanted the children, he would have taken them. He took the documents to freeze you. It changes nothing about the trap. It changes how much I want to hurt him, I said, sitting down hard in the chair opposite him. Good. Channel that, Arthur said. He opened a sleek laptop. Let's review the status. The transfer of $4.2 million hit the offshore shell company an hour ago. As per the amendment you slipped into the bylaws last month, any unauthorized transfer of operating capital over $1 million constitutes a breach of fiduciary duty and triggers the personal liability assumption clause. Which means, I asked, needing to hear it. Which means, Arthur smiled, a thin, cruel expression, that by stealing the company's money, he legally agreed to personally assume the company's toxic debt, the $19 million owed to the developers. It's not the company's debt anymore. It's Ryan's, personally. And since he's fleeing, flight is an admission of guilt. The court granted the emergency freeze on his assets 20 minutes ago. His personal accounts, his inheritance trust, his share of the beach house. It's all being seized as we speak to cover the $19 million. So when he lands, his credit cards will decline. His bank accounts will show 0. And since he used company funds to wire the money, it's wire fraud. We've already faxed the indictment to the authorities in Malay. They have an extradition treaty for financial crimes of this magnitude. I leaned back, a dark satisfaction curling in my gut. He thought he was landing in paradise with a fortune. He was landing in a cell with nothing. There is one loose end, Arthur said, looking at his screen. To make the piercing the corporate veil stick, we need to prove he wasn't acting under duress. We need to prove he thought he was getting away with it. He left a note, I said. Notes can be forged. We need digital confirmation of his intent. Something from him to you admitting victory. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text message from Ryan. He must have connected to the in-flight Wi-Fi. I stared at the screen. Ryan, I hope you like the view from the bottom, Meg. Don't bother with lawyers. I won. Chloe sends her love. I showed the screen to Arthur. Perfect, Arthur said. He just confessed. But I wasn't looking at Arthur. I was looking at the second message that popped up underneath it. A photo. It was Ryan and Chloe, clinking champagne glasses in first class. But in the background, on the tray table, there was a folder. A blue folder. My blood stopped. That was the original partnership agreement, the only copy that proved I was the one who structured the toxic debt in the first place. If he had that, he could prove I set him up. The house was too quiet. It was a sprawling modern glass box that Ryan had designed, full of sharp angles and echoes. Now it felt like a mausoleum. I threw my keys on the table and ran up the floating staircase. I needed to know if he had the original. I needed to know if that blue folder in the photo was the real thing or just a decoy. I burst into his home office. It was a chaotic mess of blueprints and rolled-up schematics. He had ransacked it before he left, looking for things to sell or steal. The safe in the corner was wide open, gaping like a hungry mouth. I fell to my knees in front of the filing cabinet. I ripped open the bottom drawer. Empty. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." If he had the original partnership deed, he could show the authorities that I had power of attorney when the debt was incurred. He could argue that I engineered the default. It wouldn't clear him, but it would drag me down with him. I began tearing the room apart. I pulled books off the shelves, shaking them. I swept the papers off his desk. I needed to find the backup hard drive. Ryan was paranoid. He digitized everything. If he took the physical folder, maybe he left the digital trace. I checked the hollowed-out book on the shelf, the fountainhead naturally, empty. I checked the vent under the desk, nothing. I sat back on my heels, breathing hard. The sun was setting, casting long, bloody shadows across the floor. Think, Megan. Where did he hide things he didn't want you to see? Not in his office. In the one place I never went. I stood up and walked down the hall to the guest room, the meditation room he had insisted on building. I pushed the door open. It smelled of sandalwood and hypocrisy. I went to the closet. On the top shelf, behind a stack of yoga mats, was a shoebox. I pulled it down. It wasn't a hard drive. It was a phone, a cheap, prepaid burner phone. I turned it over in my hands. It was powered off. Why would he leave a burner phone behind, unless he forgot it, or unless he wanted me to find it? I pressed the power button. The screen lit up. It wasn't passcoded. I sat on the floor of the meditation room, the blue light of the burner phone illuminating my face. My thumb hovered over the message icon. This was the window into the life he had been living while I was balancing the books. I tapped the icon. Hundreds of messages. All to a number saved as C. Chloe. I started scrolling back, months back. See, she looked at me today in the meeting like I was furniture. I can't wait until we take everything from her. Ryan. Patience, babe. She's smart with numbers, but she's emotionally blind. She thinks I'm working late on the complex. C. Does she suspect? Ryan. Megan. Suspect. She's too busy being the perfect little CFO. She's sterile, remember? In every way. No passion, just spreadsheets. I flinched. The word sterile wasn't just a metaphor. We had struggled to conceive Liam. He knew how much that word cut. I kept reading, forcing myself to absorb the cruelty. They mocked my clothes, my cooking, the way I organized the spice rack. It was petty, teenage nastiness. But then the tone changed. 2 weeks ago. Ryan, I signed the new amendment. She didn't even read it. She trusts me. I smiled a thin, razor-sharp smile. He had it backwards. I was the one who didn't read it. No, Ryan, you signed the trap I wrote. I scrolled to the most recent drafts. There was one unsent message. It was addressed to an email address I recognized instantly, martha.k.davis@gmail.com. My mother. I opened the draft. Martha, I'm sorry to do this, but you need to know. Megan has been having a breakdown. She's been moving money, hiding assets. I tried to stop her, but she threatened to take the kids. I'm taking her away to get help, but if you don't hear from us, it's because she's snapped. She's dangerous. I stared at the screen, my hand trembling. He wasn't just stealing the money. He was planting a narrative of insanity. He was poisoning the well with my own family so that when I screamed thief, they would hear hysteria. He was trying to gaslight me from 30,000 feet. I looked at the timestamp. Created yesterday. He never sent it. Why? Because he wanted to send it after he landed, to make it look like a distress signal. My cell phone rang, shattering the silence. The screen flashed, Martha Davis, Mom. He hadn't sent the email, but he must have called her. I took a deep breath, pitching my voice into the register of a worried, confused wife. Mom, I'm so glad you called. Megan Elizabeth. My mother's voice was a shrill shriek. Where are my grandchildren? Where is Ryan? Mom, don't you lie to me. Ryan texted me. He said you fired the staff. He said the police are there. He said you've been off your medication. I closed my eyes. Mom, I'm not on medication. Ryan stole the company money. He's on a plane to the Maldives with his mistress. Mistress? Oh, Megan, stop it. Ryan adores you. He said you're having a paranoid episode. He said you drained the accounts and blamed him. He's trying to protect you. Protect me? I laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. He left me, Mom. He left his wedding ring in the garbage disposal. He said you threw it there. She sobbed. Megan, please, the police are asking questions. The news. It's on the news. What? Channel 5. They're outside your house. I lowered the phone and walked to the front window of the living room. I pulled back the sheer curtain just an inch. Down at the end of the long driveway beyond the iron gates, I saw the vans, satellite dishes extended like antennae. A swarm of reporters stood by the intercom. Local architect firm implodes. Embezzlement scandal. Ryan had tipped them off. He had leaked the story of the bounced payroll before he even took off. He wanted a media circus to witness my breakdown. If I hid, I looked guilty. If I ran, I looked guilty. I looked at the burner phone in my hand, then at the reporters outside. Ryan wanted a show? I would give him a performance. I hung up on my mother without saying goodbye. I needed to get dressed. I needed to look like the strong, betrayed wife, not the maniac he described. I needed to walk out those gates and feed the sharks before they ate me alive. I stood in the foyer, checking my reflection in the hallway mirror. I chose a pale blue blouse. Color psychology suggests innocence and vulnerability, and applied waterproof mascara just in case the performance required tears. I didn't plan on crying, but I needed the option. Ryan wanted a spectacle? I would give him an opera. I opened the front door. The wall of sound hit me instantly. The shutter clicks of a dozen cameras sounded like a swarm of cicadas, a frantic mechanical chattering that drowned out the wind in the trees. Voices shouted my name, overlapping into a chaotic wave of noise. Mrs. Vance, is it true? Did you authorize the transfer? Where is your husband? I walked down the stone steps, my movements slow and deliberate. I stopped at the bottom, just inside the perimeter of the iron gate, where the microphones were thrust through the bars like spears. I clasped my hands in front of me, suppressing the urge to smooth my hair. I needed to look rattled. Please, I said, my voice soft. The microphones leaned in. Please, I want my husband to come home. A reporter from the local affiliate, a woman with aggressive bangs, shouted over the others. Sources say the payroll for Sterling and Vance bounced this morning. Police are investigating a $4 million embezzlement. Did you take the money, Mrs. Vance? I looked at her, widening my eyes. Take it? I'm the one who called the police. Ryan, my husband. I let the sentence hang, injecting a tremor into the pause. He sent me a message this morning. He said he was under a lot of pressure. The Dubai project, the debts. I wasn't lying. I was just recontextualizing. Are you saying Ryan Vance stole the money? Another reporter yelled. I'm saying I'm worried about his mental state, I said, looking directly into the lens of the nearest camera. He's not himself. He took our children's passports. He left me here with nothing. If anyone sees him, please, just tell him to come back. We can fix this. We can pay everyone back. I let a single tear slide down my cheek. It was a masterpiece of biological control. Mrs. Vance, is there a mistress? I flinched visibly. I have to go inside. Please respect our privacy. I turned and walked back up the steps, ignoring the renewed frenzy of shouting. I closed the heavy oak door and leaned against it, exhaling a long, steady breath. The performance was done. I had planted the seed. Ryan was unstable, running from debt, and I was the dutiful wife trying to clean up the mess. The public would look for a villain, and I had just handed them a headshot of Ryan. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting a text from my lawyer. It was a notification from the bank, not the business account, the personal joint account. Alert account status change. Freezing order, initiated by creditor. Apex Development Group. My stomach dropped. The trap I had set for Ryan, the piercing of the corporate veil, was working too well. The developers weren't just going after Ryan's assets, they were going after everything attached to his name, including our joint savings, the money I needed to pay Arthur, the money I needed to survive the next month. I looked at the time, 10:15 in the morning. The freeze was initiated, but the banking protocols usually took an hour to propagate through the clearinghouse servers. I had 45 minutes to drain the account before I was destitute. I drove the Audi like I was qualifying for the Grand Prix, weaving through the mid-morning traffic on the interstate. My knuckles were white on the leather steering wheel. I kept checking the dashboard clock, 10:32. Ryan had emptied the corporate accounts, but the joint savings held the proceeds from the sale of our first house. $300,000. It was my war chest. If the creditors froze it, I would be fighting this battle with both hands tied behind my back. I screeched into the bank's parking lot, taking up 2 spaces. I didn't care. I grabbed my purse and ran toward the glass doors. Inside, the bank was cool and quiet, a jarring contrast to the fire in my veins. I marched straight to the teller line. There was one person ahead of me, an elderly woman counting out pennies. "Come on," I whispered, tapping my foot. "Please." Finally, she moved. I stepped up to the counter. The teller, a young man with a name tag that said Jared, smiled politely. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "I need to make a withdrawal," I said, sliding my debit card and ID across the marble. "Cashier's check. The full balance." Jared took the card. He typed something into his terminal. He frowned. "The full balance? That's a significant amount, Mrs. Vance. I'll need a manager's override." "Fine, get one. Quickly, please. I have an emergency." He typed again. "Actually, the system is showing a pending flag on the account." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Pending? Is it frozen?" "Not fully," Jared said, looking confused. "It says pending litigation hold. It usually means the freeze is in the queue but hasn't finalized. Let me see if I can push the withdrawal through before it locks." He reached for the phone. "Don't call anyone," I said, too sharply. I forced a smile. "Just try the transaction. Please, Jared. My husband is having a medical issue. I need the funds for the hospital." Jared hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, let me try." He typed. I watched his fingers. Enter. Enter. Confirm. The printer whirred. I nearly collapsed with relief. He slid the check across the counter. $312,000. I snatched it, shoving it into my bag. "One more thing," I said, breathless. "I need to access my safety deposit box. Box 402. "Certainly, right this way." He led me into the vault. The heavy steel door swung open. I used my key, he used his. He pulled the long metal box out and set it on the table, then retreated to give me privacy. I opened the lid. I expected to see the backup hard drive, the one Ryan kept his insurance on, the one that contained the unedited financial records that could prove I knew about the debt months ago. The box was empty. No, not empty. There was a single object resting on the velvet lining. I reached in and picked it up. It was a Polaroid photo. I turned it over. It was a picture of a woman. Not Chloe. It was me. Sleeping. Taken from the doorway of our bedroom. I flipped the photo over. On the back, in Ryan's handwriting, was a date. 2 days ago. He hadn't just been planning to leave. He had been watching me, documenting me, and he had taken the hard drive. If he had that drive with him, or if he had stashed it somewhere else, my narrative of innocent wife was sitting on a ticking time bomb. Chloe lived in a converted loft in the Arts District, the kind of building that smelled of roasted coffee and gentrification. I knew the address because I ran the company's insurance policies, and Ryan had insisted on listing her as a consultant with a premium health plan. I parked the car 3 blocks away and pulled on a baseball cap. It was a risk coming here. But if Ryan had the hard drive, I needed leverage. I needed to ensure that even if he tried to take me down, he would be dragged down by his own accomplice. I slipped into the building's entryway when a delivery courier came out. I took the stairs to the 4th floor, apartment 4B. I stood before the door. I didn't have a key to the apartment, but I had the key to the building's fire maintenance box, which Ryan, the architect, had designed. He kept a master spare in the utility panel in the hallway for inspections. I opened the panel. There it was, predictable. I unlocked Chloe's door and slipped inside. The apartment was a sensory assault. It smelled of expensive vanilla perfume and stale marijuana smoke. Clothes were draped over every surface. Silks, cashmeres, things Ryan had bought her with company money. I moved quickly. I wasn't here to steal. I was here to give. I pulled a folder from my tote bag. Inside were the liability acceptance forms for the shell company Ryan had used to embezzle the funds. I had forged Chloe's signature on them weeks ago, just in case. I needed to hide them somewhere the police would find them when they inevitably raided this place. I went to the bedroom. The bed was unmade. I lifted the mattress. Too cliché. I opened her closet, a chaotic explosion of color. I pushed aside the dresses and found a stack of shoe boxes. I opened a box of Jimmy Choos. Perfect. I slid the folder under the tissue paper, beneath the heels. Now, she wasn't just the mistress. She was the co-conspirator, the legal signatory. I stood up and smoothed the clothes back into place. I turned to leave. That's when I heard it, the rattle of a key in the front door lock. I froze. Chloe was in the Maldives. Ryan was in the air. Who had a key? I looked around frantically. There was nowhere to hide in the open-concept loft except the bathroom. I dove into the small tiled room and pulled the door almost shut, leaving a sliver of a crack. The front door opened. Heavy footsteps, not a woman's walk. Hello? A male voice, deep, rough. I held my breath, pressing my hand over my mouth. The footsteps moved across the hardwood floor. They stopped right outside the bathroom door. "I know you're in there," the voice said. I saw the light under the door move. I didn't cower. Cowering implies guilt. I kicked the door open and stepped out, holding my car keys between my knuckles like a weapon. The man standing in the hallway was big, maybe 6'2", with a buzz cut and a cheap leather jacket. He looked like a bouncer for a dive bar. He blinked, surprised by my aggression. "Who are you?" I demanded, pitching my voice low and authoritative. "What are you doing in Miss Summers' apartment?" He laughed, a dry barking sound. "Who am I? I'm her brother. Jackson, who are you? You're not the maid." Chloe's brother. Of course, the one with the gambling problem Ryan had mentioned once over dinner, rolling his eyes. "I'm Megan Vance," I said, stepping into the light. "Ryan's wife." Jackson's face changed. The amusement vanished, replaced by a flicker of recognition and then hostility. "Vance? The guy who ran off?" "The guy who ran off with your sister," I corrected. "And the $4 million he stole." Jackson crossed his arms. "Chloe said they were going on a business trip. She said Ryan was setting up a new branch. She didn't say anything about stealing." "Ryan says a lot of things," I said, relaxing my stance just a fraction. "He told me he was going to the gym this morning. Now he's on a flight to Qatar. Did he tell you where they were going, Jackson?" "Yeah, some island," he said. Jackson hesitated, looking down. He said he was going to take care of the family. He said there was money for everyone. Money for everyone, I repeated, letting the sarcasm drip. Jackson, Ryan emptied the company accounts. The police are looking for him. They're looking for Chloe, too. If they find out she's with him, she's an accessory to grand larceny. She's looking at 15 years in federal prison. Jackson shifted his weight. Bullshit. Ryan said it was legal. Ryan lied. He used her. He put the stolen money in accounts with her name on them to shield himself. Why do you think he took her? I stepped closer. He didn't take her for love, Jackson. He took her for a fall guy. It was a gamble, but it hit the mark. Doubt clouded Jackson's eyes. He promised me 10 grand, Jackson muttered. He said if I watered the plants and checked the mail while they were gone, he'd wire me 10 grand next week. He doesn't have 10 grand, I said. The accounts are frozen. The only thing he left behind is debt and a warrant. I reached into my purse and pulled out a business card. The police are going to come here. They're going to tear this place apart. If you know anything, if he sent you anything or told you where the money is, you need to tell me. Before they get here, I can help her. I can tell the judge she was tricked, but only if I get to the money before the FBI does. Jackson looked at the card, then at me. He didn't give me the money, but he gave me a package to mail. To mail? My pulse quickened. To who? He didn't say. Just an address in the Cayman Islands. He said to drop it in the box tomorrow, not today. Tomorrow. Where is it? Jackson pointed to the kitchen counter. A padded envelope sat there, innocuous and brown. Give it to me, I said. I can't. He said it was life or death. It is, I said. Hers. Jackson grabbed the envelope, but he didn't hand it to me. He held it to his chest. I'm keeping it. If he really screwed her over, this is my insurance. I'm not giving it to you. I'm going to open it myself. I left the apartment without the envelope. Jackson was too big to fight and too stupid to reason with further. He threatened to call the cops if I didn't leave. I had to retreat. But I knew one thing. Whatever was in that envelope, it was heading to the Caymans, and Ryan wanted it mailed tomorrow. That meant the timing was critical. I sat in my car, my hands shaking. I needed to regroup. I needed to see what Ryan was doing right now. I pulled out my phone and opened the browser. I navigated to Ryan's cloud account. I knew his password. He used the same variation of his favorite architect's name and his birth year for everything. Le Corbusier, 1984. I logged in. The interface showed his recent activity. He was online. He was using the plane's satellite internet. He wasn't checking email. He was on a real estate portal, https://www.google.com/search?q equals MaldivesLuxuryEstates.com. I watched the screen as he navigated. He was looking at a villa on a private atoll. Price, $3.8 million. He's trying to launder it immediately, I whispered. Buy the property. Put it in a trust. I clicked on the Pending Transactions tab of the site. Thank God for shared cookies and auto login. There was a contract pending signature. Buyer, Megan Vance. I blinked. I wiped the screen, thinking I was seeing things. Buyer, Megan Vance. Purchase via power of attorney, Ryan Vance. He wasn't buying it in his name. He wasn't even buying it in Chloe's name. He was buying it in my name. I stared at the glowing pixels, the realization washing over me like ice water. He wasn't just stealing the money to run away. He was framing me as the beneficiary. If he bought this villa in my name using the stolen funds, he could claim he was just the dutiful husband following my orders to secure a vacation home. He could claim I was the mastermind and he was just the courier. He was setting me up to be the owner of the laundered assets. I had to stop the transaction. If that digital signature went through, the deed would be recorded on the blockchain. The money would move from the offshore shell to the real estate developer, and my name would be permanently attached to the crime. I tapped frantically on the screen. Cancel, reject, abort. The buttons were grayed out. He was logged in as the primary user on his device. I was just viewing a mirrored session through the cloud sync. I couldn't interact. Think, Megan. Think. I couldn't stop him from clicking sign. But I could invalidate the identity he was using. I opened a new tab. I went to the government's digital identity portal, the one we used for notarizing architectural blueprints. It required two-factor authentication to be active. I logged in. I went to the Authorized Devices section. There it was, Ryan's iPad, active. I hit Revoke Access. Are you sure? This will immediately terminate all active secure sessions. Burn it, I hissed and tapped Confirm. On the other tab, the Real Estate portal froze. Then, a spinning wheel. Then, an error message. Session timed out. Reauthentication required. I slumped back in the seat. He couldn't reauthenticate without my phone, which received the codes. He was locked out. The money was stuck in the shell account. He couldn't spend it. I had won the round. My phone chimed. A text from Sarah at the office. Sarah. Megan. Oh my God. Have you seen Twitter? I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. I opened the app. Trending in my city, #CrazyMegan. I clicked the hashtag. It was a video. Grainy, shaky footage. It was taken from inside our kitchen, maybe 2 months ago. I was holding a kitchen knife. I had been chopping vegetables for a stew. Ryan was filming me. In the video, I was shouting, "I will destroy you, Ryan. I will take everything apart brick by brick if you don't listen to me." It was an argument about a contractor who was cutting corners. I was talking about the project, but the video was edited. It cut out the context. It just showed me, knife in hand, screaming that I would destroy him. Caption, the wife who threatened to kill him before he disappeared. #Sterling Vance, #embezzlement. He had saved it. He had edited it. And he had scheduled it to post. I looked out the car window. A woman walking her dog paused, looking at my car. She looked at her phone, then at me. Her eyes went wide. She recognized me. I needed a professional. I couldn't spin this one myself. I drove to a nondescript office building on the outskirts of the city. Klein and Associates. Crisis management. David Klein was a man who fixed things that were unfixable. He met me in a conference room with no windows. He had the video playing on a loop on a large screen. "It's bad, Megan," David said, not looking at me. 3 million views in an hour. The narrative is shifting. You're not the victim anymore. You're the unhinged wife who drove him to flee. "It's out of context," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "He was recording me while I was cooking. We were arguing about a foundation pour." "Truth doesn't matter," David said, turning off the screen. "Velocity matters. We need to counter-program. Something harder. Something that makes the knife video look irrelevant." I reached into my bag and pulled out the flash drive I had prepared. It contained the PDF of the Asset Reallocation Amendment, the document Ryan signed while drunk, the one where he specifically authorized the movement of funds to the exact offshore account he used today. "Leak this," I said, "to the financial blogs, not the tabloids, the serious ones, the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg." David took the drive. "What is it?" "It's proof that this wasn't a panic exit," I said. "It's proof he planned the financial structure of this theft 6 weeks ago. Crazy wives don't draft complex offshore liability amendments, David. Greedy CEOs do." David smiled, a cold, shark-like expression. "Boring financial premeditation beats emotional outburst. It's dry, but it's undeniable. If we drop this, the narrative shifts from domestic drama to corporate fraud." "Do it," I said. "And David, make sure the metadata shows his digital signature." I left his office feeling a grim sense of control returning. I got back into my car. The sun was setting now, the sky a bruised purple. I started the engine. I pulled out onto the highway. I accelerated to merge. I pressed the gas pedal. The car surged forward. I saw brake lights ahead. I pressed the brake pedal. It went to the floor. Nothing happened. I pumped it again. Soft, spongy, useless. The car was doing 60 miles an hour. The traffic ahead was stopped. Panic, sharp and electric, spiked in my chest. I downshifted frantically, the engine screaming. I yanked the emergency brake. The rear tires locked. The car fishtailed, screeching across the asphalt. I wrestled the wheel, steering into the skid, narrowly missing a semi-truck. The car spun 180 degrees and slammed backward into the concrete median. The impact snapped my head back against the rest. Silence. Steam hissed from the radiator. My heart was beating so hard it hurt. I sat there, gripping the wheel, staring at the oncoming headlights through the shattered windshield. Ryan hadn't just taken the money. He hadn't just taken the passports. He'd crawled under my car before he left. This wasn't a game of chess anymore. He was trying to kill me. The tow truck driver, a man named Sal with grease under his fingernails and a grim expression, wiped his hands on a rag. We were standing in the fluorescent-lit bay of his garage. My car, or what was left of the rear bumper, sat on the lift. "You're lucky, lady," Sal said, pointing up at the undercarriage with a flashlight. Normally, brake lines rust out, or they snap from pressure. They don't get sliced clean through with a serrated edge. I looked at the black rubber hose dangling like a severed artery. It was a clean cut. Precise. "He tried to kill me," I said, the realization settling in not as fear but as a cold, hard, geometric fact. Ryan hadn't just wanted to leave with the money. He wanted to leave as a widower. If I had died on the highway, the investigation would have been a traffic accident. The embezzlement would have been pinned on the dead wife who couldn't defend herself. It was elegant. It was architectural. "There's something else," Sal said. He reached up into the wheel well, behind the strut. He yanked hard and pulled something loose with a metallic clack. He held it out to me. A small black box, about the size of a deck of cards. "GPS tracker?" Sal grunted. "Battery-powered, high-end. This thing has been transmitting for a while." I took the device. It was heavy. "Can you tell where it's been?" I asked. "If you hook it up to a laptop?" "Yeah, it logs history." I didn't wait. I pulled my laptop from my bag, right there on the oily concrete floor. I connected the device via USB. The driver's installed. The map loaded. A red line traced my movements for the last 3 months. Home, office, school, grocery store. But there was one recurring stop, a detour I never made. Every Tuesday night while I was at my yoga class, the car and Ryan went to a location on the industrial side of town, a self-storage facility off I-95. He hadn't just been visiting Chloe. He had been visiting a stash. The storage unit complex was a maze of corrugated metal and flickering sodium lights. I found Unit B112. The padlock was new, shiny brass against the rusted hasp. I didn't have the key, but I had a bolt cutter I had bought from the hardware store on the way over. I snapped the lock. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet alleyway. I rolled the metal door up. The smell of dust and stale paper hit me. The unit wasn't full of furniture. It was set up like a workspace, a folding table, a chair, and a high-end printer. I walked in, shining my phone's flashlight. The walls were covered in taped-up papers. I stepped closer. They were practice sheets, hundreds of them. Megan Vance, Megan Vance, Megan Vance. He had been practicing my signature for months, maybe years. On the table, there was a stack of documents. I picked up the top one. It was a loan application for a line of credit in my name, dated 2 years ago. Approved. I picked up another, a life insurance policy on me. Beneficiary, Ryan Vance. Amount, $5 million. He hadn't just decided to leave recently. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was a demolition project he had been working on since the day we got married. He had built our entire life on a foundation of fraud, waiting for the right moment to pull the support beams. I felt a wave of nausea, followed instantly by a wave of pure, white-hot clarity. He thought he was the architect? He was just a draftsman. I was the one who was going to condemn the building. I grabbed the stack of forgeries. I grabbed the life insurance policy. Then I saw something else. A box in the corner. I opened it. It was full of prepaid SIM cards and fake IDs, passports with his face but different names. David Miller, John Smith. This was the proof. This proved premeditation. This proved flight risk. This proved he was a career criminal, not a desperate husband. I sat in the passenger seat of my rental car, the laptop glowing on my lap. I had scanned every single forgery, the life insurance policy, the practice signatures, the fake IDs. I compiled them into a single PDF file. Subject, urgent, evidence of criminal fraud and flight, Ryan Vance. I attached the file. I added the contact information for the Maldivian Ministry of Legal Affairs and the specific prosecutor handling the extradition treaty. If it was just debt, they might let him stay in a nice hotel while lawyers argued. But identity theft, forged passports, attempted murder via vehicle sabotage, that made him a threat to their national security. I hit send. The progress bar crawled across the screen. Sent. I closed the laptop. It was done. When he landed, he wouldn't just be broke, he would be an international pariah. I started the car to leave, but a figure stepped in front of my headlights. It was the facility manager, a heavy-set man in a blue vest. He was holding a phone up, looking at it, then looking at me. He tapped on my window. I rolled it down an inch. "Can I help you?" "You're her," he said, his eyes narrowing. "The lady from the video, the one with the knife." My heart skipped. The video, the hashtag Crazy Megan hashtag. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, putting the car in reverse. "Yeah, you do," he said, backing away but pointing his phone at me. "I saw the news, you're dangerous. I called the cops. They said not to approach you." He had called them, not because I broke a lock, but because Ryan's smear campaign had worked. To this man, I wasn't a victim uncovering evidence. I was a psycho wife breaking into a storage unit. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. I didn't wait to explain. I slammed the gas pedal and reversed out of the alley, tires screeching, leaving the manager shouting in my wake. I couldn't go home. The press was there. I couldn't go to the police station. They might arrest me based on the video before I could explain the evidence. I went to the only place I still technically controlled, the office. It was 2 a.m. The glass building was dark, a black monolith against the city sky. I used my key card. The beep was reassuringly normal. I took the elevator up to the 30th floor. The office was silent. The empty desks of the employees Ryan had robbed stood like tombstones. I walked to my office and locked the door. I collapsed into my chair, the leather squeaking. I just needed to wait. 4 more hours until his flight landed. 4 more hours until the trap snapped shut. I closed my eyes, listening to the hum of the HVAC system. Then, the hum stopped. The building went dead silent. The lights in the hallway, which were on motion sensors, flickered. Someone was walking down the corridor. I sat up, adrenaline flooding my system. The police? No, they would announce themselves. The footsteps were heavy, deliberate. They stopped outside my glass door. A shadow fell across the frosted pane. I reached for the only weapon I had, a heavy crystal award on my desk. CFO of the year. The door handle turned. It was locked. "Open the door, Megan," a voice rumbled. I recognized the voice. It wasn't the police, and it wasn't Ryan. I lowered the crystal award. I unlocked the door. Standing there was Marcus Thorne, the silent partner, the man who had put up the initial seed capital for the firm 10 years ago, the man with connections to organizations that didn't use lawyers to settle disputes. "Marcus," I said, keeping my voice level, "you're up late." He walked in, filling the room. He looked immaculate in a suit that cost more than my house. "I heard a rumor, Megan. I heard my equity has evaporated." "Ryan took it," I said. "All of it." "I know Ryan took it," Marcus said, his voice dangerously soft. "But you're the CFO. You watch the accounts. Did you let him take it?" "I let him move it," I said, walking back to my desk. I wasn't afraid of Marcus. I needed Marcus. Because if I had stopped him yesterday, we would have recovered maybe half. He had hidden it well. And now? "Now," I said, turning my laptop screen toward him. "I have tracked every cent. He moved $4.2 million, but by doing so, he triggered the personal liability clause I wrote. He unwittingly pledged his entire personal estate to the firm." Marcus looked at the screen. He saw the legal documents. "His estate is worth $8 million, I continued. "The beach house, the vintage car collection, the trust fund. It's all ours now, Marcus. I traded $4 million in liquid cash for $8 million in hard assets. I doubled your investment in 24 hours. Marcus stared at me. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. "You're a cold woman, Megan." "I'm a businesswoman," I corrected. "What do you need from me?" "I need you to make a call," I said. "You have friends in Malay, customs officials, private security." "I do." "Ryan lands in 3 hours. The police will arrest him for the fraud, but I want to make sure he doesn't bribe his way out before they get there. I want him greeted before he gets to passport control." Marcus nodded. He pulled out his phone. "Consider it done." I looked at the flight tracker on my screen. Flight QA492. Status: descending. I sat in the office chair, watching the sunrise paint the city skyline in hues of pink and gold. Marcus had left hours ago. It was just me and the phone. The flight tracker showed arrived. I visualized it. The humidity hitting him as the cabin doors opened, the excitement of freedom, the smell of the ocean, then the confusion. The men in suits waiting at the bottom of the jet bridge, not hotel concierges. Customs officers, and behind them, Marcus's friends. My phone rang. It wasn't a local number, it was a satellite call. I picked it up. I didn't say anything. I just listened. "Megan?" His voice was panicked, breathless. There was shouting in the background. "Megan, pick up. There's been a mistake. My cards aren't working. They're saying I'm detained. They have a warrant." I took a sip of my cold coffee. "Hello, Ryan." "Megan, listen to me. You have to call the bank. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them I was authorized." "I can't do that, Ryan," I said, my voice smooth as silk. "The crazy wife doesn't have authorization anymore. Remember? You told everyone I was unstable." "Megan, please, they're taking my passport. They're taking Chloe. Tell her I said hello, and tell her thanks for the shoebox. It was very helpful." There was a silence on the line, a deep, horrified silence as the pieces clicked into place. "You?" he whispered. "You knew. You planned this." "I didn't plan for you to leave me, Ryan," I said, looking at the empty spot on my finger where the ring used to be. "I just planned for what would happen if you tried to steal from me." "I'll kill you," he snarled. "When I get back, I'll—" "You're not coming back," I said. "Not for a long, long time. And when you do, you'll be working for me. You still owe the firm $4 million. I intend to garnish your wages until the day you die." "Megan!" I hung up. I placed the phone on the desk. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. The city was waking up below me. The traffic was moving. The world was continuing. I was alone. I was in debt. I had a PR crisis to manage and a company to rebuild from ashes. But I was free. Outro. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I disagree. Revenge is a business transaction. It requires capital, strategy, and a ruthless adherence to the contract. Ryan thought he was the protagonist of a romantic thriller. He forgot he was living in a financial procedural. He's currently awaiting trial in a holding cell that lacks air conditioning. I sent him a care package, a toothbrush, a bar of soap, and a copy of the partnership agreement he signed without reading. I kept the house. I kept the firm. I even kept his last name. After all, I paid for it. And you? When the person you trust the most hands you a pen and tells you to sign, do you read the fine print or do you just trust? If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.